Interpreting a confidence interval of two proportions. To interpret a confidence interval of two proportions, you should ask yourself the following questions. 1. Is 0 included in the interval? If so, then we can't rule out the possibility that the population proportions are equal. 2. What does a positive value mean? A negative value? What is the greatest plausible difference for population proportions? The smallest possible difference? To answer these questions, keep in mind that we have to know which population was population 1 and which one was population 2. Because we're looking at the difference, P1 minus P2, so it's going to make a difference in terms of which number is bigger. You'll see when we look at an example. Okay, so here's our example, and it comes from previous videos we have done. So we have been looking at this example where we compare men and women's opinions about stem cell research. And so in our example from the previous videos in 7.5, we found a 95% confidence interval for the difference in proportions between men who believe embryonic stem cell research is morally wrong and the proportion of women who believe it's wrong to be negative is 0.046 to 0.006. Now, in percentages, this is negative 4.6% to 0.6%. What is this range of numbers? It's like all the numbers we think that P1 minus P2 might be. So we think P1 minus P2 might be as small as negative 4.6, as large as 0.6, or any number in between maybe. We used women as population 1 as men as population 2. How do we interpret this interval? The first thing we want to check is if 0 is in the interval. In other words, is 0 a number in this range of numbers? Is it between them? Well, one of the numbers is negative and one is positive. So if we put these on the number line, we're going to find that 0 is in between them. So 0 is in the interval. What does this mean? Well, this means that it's possible or plausible that P1 minus P2 equals 0. We think that maybe P1 minus P2 might be 0 because 0 is in the interval. What does it mean if P1 minus P2 is 0? Well, if we add P2 to both sides of this, we get P1 equals P2. What does this mean? Well, P1 represents the percentage of the whole population of women in the US that believe stem cell research is morally wrong. P2 represents the percentage of men who believe it's morally wrong. We think that it might be that these are equal to each other, that the men and the women feel the same way. So another way of saying this is that we can't rule out the possibility that the proportion of men who believe that embryonic stem cell research is wrong and the proportion of women who believe that embryonic stem cell research is wrong are the same. Second thing we have to consider is what is the greatest possible difference for the population proportions? What is the smallest possible difference between population proportions? For this, it's important to keep in mind that population 1 was the women and population 2 was the men. So when we write P1, it deals with women, P2 deals with men. Now, to answer this question, we'll first look at the greatest possible difference. The greatest possible difference is the biggest number in our confidence interval. Now, the biggest number in our confidence interval is 0.006. Everything else is smaller than that. If P1 minus P2 is 0.006, that would mean that P1 has to be bigger than P2 by a little bit. You only subtract two numbers and get a positive number when the first number is bigger than the second number. Now, in this case, because P1 deals with the women, it would mean that the proportion of women who believe stem cell research is wrong is bigger than that of the men. So we think that that's possible. In fact, it's not implausible that the percentage for women is as much as 0.6 percentage points above the percentage for men, because this difference is 0.6% if you move the decimal two places to the right. Let's look at the smallest possible difference. So the smallest possible difference is the smallest number in this confidence interval, or negative 0.046. If we take P1 minus P2 and we get a negative number, that means that the first number, P1, would have to be smaller than P2. The only way that we can subtract two numbers and get a negative is if the first number is smaller than the second number. What would this mean? It would mean the proportion of women who believe stem cell research is wrong is smaller than the proportion of men, which is P2. Therefore, it's not implausible that the percentage of women is as much as 4.6 percentage points below the percentage of men. So we say below because of the negative sign here, and then I've moved the decimal two places to the right to make this a percentage. So we can look at, is it possible that the percentages are the same. In this case, it is because 0 is in the interval. We can also start talking about, is it possible that more men believe that it's wrong? Is it possible that more women believe it's wrong? In this case, you could have either, because we have the biggest number is positive, the smallest number is negative. So at this point, we know that these men and women could have the same opinion, or they could have different opinions, and it could be the women believe that it's wrong at a higher percentage, or the men believe it's wrong at a higher percentage. There's a variety of things that could be true. And then these specific numbers here, 0.006 and negative 0.046, give us about like how far apart we think they might be on either extreme. Okay, that's it